Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Dreamworks Switch to Life. And in today's video, we're going to be reviewing the first How to Train Your Dragon TV show, that of course being Dragons Riders of Berk. We're also going to be talking about its sequel series, Defenders of Berk, but they're more or less the same show anyway. One is just the second season of the other. So without further ado, let's discuss. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to go into full details about this series because one, this series is really old, but two, it's actually just that good. I highly recommend you go check it out. All 40 episodes of both TV shows are available on Peacock. I mean, you still have to pay, but they're there. But honestly, this series is just that good. So I actually really enjoyed this show because it actually decided to keep the voice actors' tone and even the animation style from the actual movie itself. Obviously, it's not as high budget as it was back in the original film because, it's a TV show, but the fact of the matter is that the show actually looks stunning and it's actually cool how much they were able to do with this. In fact, the animation is so good that they actually have Hiccup's hair moving in the wind, and that's really cool. I don't know how hard it is to animate moving hair, but it's very hard and very complicated and very long. The fact that they actually took the time to do that really shows how much care they put into the series. We also have a lot of the voice actors from the movies returning, including Hiccup, Astrid, Fishlegs, and even Toughnut. Roughnut and Snotlout were replaced, but I felt like they had some really good actors portraying them. In fact, I hate to say it, but I actually like the TV show version of Snotlout way better than the actual movie version played by Jonah Hill. And then, of course, there's the music, which is really good. Not only did they pull from the actual movie itself, but they also wrote their own music that actually feels like it would have been in the movie, and it would have been written by John Powell, and that's really cool. And then, of course, there's the fact that they kept the tone of this series. This isn't necessarily just the kids going on adventures with their dragons. Well, actually it is. But what they really do here is actually better than the other TV shows that DreamWorks was making at the time for Nickelodeon, which were basically, we have some fun characters, let's put them in interesting situations. In this one, they actually try to continue the story where the movie left off. In fact, the first episode is all about how having dragons move into Berk is causing problems all over, and unless the kids can figure out how to actually make the dragons live with humans in peace, they will be banished from Berk. And they didn't forget about certain aspects. They also kept a lot of the lore from the actual film itself, introducing a bunch of new dragon species and teaching us about these cool dragon facts. We even see other dragon species like the Scaldron, the Whispering Death, the Changewing, and of course the brand new species Typhoomerang, which Hiccup actually discovered. And we're also learning about different dragon behaviors that are a lot like animals, but also a lot like humans, proving that dragons are actually a lot more intelligent than we think they actually are in this universe. And that's really cool. But, of course, one of the major draws of this series is its darker tone, and we couldn't have that if we didn't introduce the villains. Now, I actually really liked the villains of this series. First, we're introduced to Mildew, who is basically the village grump who doesn't like dragons at all and wants them to abandon Berk, and he will do everything in his power to do it.
But things have changed. For the better, if you ask me. I didn't.
But he can't really do much since he's an old man. And then, of course, there's the actual villains of the series, including Alvin the Treacherous. Now, believe it or not, Alvin the Treacherous was actually the major villain of the book series that How to Train Your Dragon is based on, but he's a lot different from his movie counterpart, which is really good. In the series, Alvin is chief of the outcast tribe, and he actually wants to hunt down dragons, and he believes Hiccup to be the dragon conqueror because, he ended the dragon war by defeating the Red Death, the queen of all dragons. But then he learns that Hiccup can actually train dragons, so throughout the rest of the series, he's trying to come up with evil plans to get Hiccup to actually teach him how to train dragons, which doesn't really go so well because Hiccup outsmarts him almost every time. But still, he is an actual legitimate threat, and you get that across the entire series. But of course, my personal favorite villain from the entire original How to Train Your Dragon TV show is Dagger the Deranged. And he's actually a lot like Alvin from the books, where he's so blinded by revenge and trying to kill Hiccup and Toothless that it actually prevents him from being smart. But he is extremely powerful since he has a lot of loyal berserker soldiers who, like him, are actually crazed lunatics. But of course, what really makes Dagger stand out is his motive, of which there actually isn't really any. He just is evil for the sake of being evil because he just thinks it would make him cool, and that's really awesome. Unlike Alvin the Treacherous, who is evil because he's trying to find ways to conquer Berk, and he does it by trying to build himself an army of trained dragons, and in order to do that, he has to get Hiccup and blah, blah, blah. But with Daggers, it's kind of complicated, but essentially, he believes that Berk is actually trying to train dragons to amass an army of them so that they can conquer the entire archipelago, which is obviously not true, but it's what he believes, and it's even worse when he finds out that Hiccup and Stoic actually lied to him about actually training dragons because they were trying to hide them at one point in the series. And then once he discovers the secret, he actually does become a full-on villain and a major threat of Dragon's Defenders of Berk. So I actually really loved both of these TV shows. See, while Riders of Berk had the kids going on a bunch of adventures where they not only learned about dragons, but also occasionally fought against Alvin, there wasn't really much going on that served as an overarching plot. That changes with Defenders of Berk, where Alvin actually manages to sneak into the island, and he ends up placing a bunch of Whispering Death eggs under the island so that it will destroy Berk, among them being a giant red egg that hatches into a really big monster, the Screaming Death. So throughout the rest of Defenders of Berk, Hiccup and the gang go on many adventures doing one of four things. They either learn about themselves or brand new dragons, which is really rare in this series, but two, they also fight against Alvin the Treacherous, until he's eventually killed by Dagger the Deranged. Then 3, they fight against the Screaming Death, and 4, they fight against Dagger the Deranged. Then they're in the series finale, which is a 2-parter. It's revealed that Alvin the Treacherous actually faked his death, and he wants to work with Berk to actually defeat Dagger the Deranged, and they eventually do that by bringing the Screaming Death to his mother, which is the whole reason the Screaming Death has been a threat. He's been trying to find his mother, and because he hatched on the Isle of Berk, he just thought that's where she was. But no, she was actually locked in a cage on Outcast Island, where Dagger was holding her captive, and that's pretty much how they defeat him. So the series ends with the Screaming Death and Alvin the Treacherous and the Outcast and Berserkers turned into allies, while Dagger the Deranged is thrown into prison. But you know what else I loved about this series besides its dark tone and overall really good story, particularly in Defenders of Berk? Is the emotional depth of the characters and how we actually get to learn about them. In the movies, aside from Hiccup and Astrid, the other dragon riders don't really get a chance to shine. In the TV shows, they actually have episodes centered around them, and we learn a lot about their respective characters, and it's really cool. We even get to learn a little bit about Gobber the Belch and Stoic the Vast, who in this series actually gets a dragon named Thornado.
Because he has the power of Thor and the ferocity of a tornado. Besides, it's the only thing he'll answer to. Turns out he can be quite stubborn.
Can't imagine where he gets that from.
But by the end, he actually gets rid of it in a selfless sacrifice. And then, of course, there's plenty characters who are unique to the TV shows that don't appear in the movies, like Bucket and Mulch, who are actually really funny, and I just love their comedic duo. But really, I also love the humor of this. Honestly, I can't imagine that this show is actually bad. Anyone who watches it, they might say, oh, the animation's not as good as the movies, or I miss some of the voice actors. But aside from that, you can't really complain because this show is just that good. It has some really great stories, and it has some really cool and iconic emotional characters and emotional scenes. Not to mention the music is awesome, and of course the animalistic behaviors, and above all else the darker tone of this series to match the movie, which really made this approachable not only for kids but also for adults. And finally, the world building is just awesome, and they not only don't forget what the movie set up, but they also add to it in its own unique way. And then the second and third movie actually builds off of it, which is really awesome. Honestly, this TV show is what made me fall in love with the How to Train Your Dragon franchise and made it my favorite animated franchise of all time. Of course, all good things have to come to an end, or do they? Because apparently this show was so good that it ended up getting a sequel series called Dragon's Race to the Edge. You can find it streaming on Netflix, and before you go and check it out, please note that you actually do need to watch Riders and Defenders of Berk in order to understand Race to the Edge, which is kind of disappointing, but still. Honestly, it's worth checking out all 3 TV shows. Riders of Berk and then Defenders of Berk was actually my favorite TV show that happened to be based on a movie until Race to the Edge came out, and to this day, Race to the Edge is still my favorite TV show that's based on a movie. Anyway, that's it for my review. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and please make sure to comment down below what your favorite dragon species from How to Train Your Dragon is. Also, please make sure to subscribe so that you can keep up to date with all things Dreamworks, including any updates that we have about the live-action How to Train Your Dragon movie, and also to check out more cool reviews for Dreamworks movies and TV shows like this one. I'm actually working on one for Race to the Edge right after I finish editing this video. But with that in mind, I hope that you're all staying safe out there, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
We could put up signs.
Signs? For dragons?
Oh, for the people.
Signs? For Vikings? We're not big readers, Stoic.